What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So a couple of days ago, we had talked about an FCC filing that Nintendo made around a mystery controller or accessory of some kind. Well, it looks like we're going to find out what that is here very soon, as the date for the confidentiality agreement has been altered, leading everyone to believe that we're going to see an announcement here at any point. And what better time to make that announcement than like an hour after Newswave goes up. Also, we are going to be talking about an update Sony has made to the PlayStation to fix a preservation issue that they had, and we're also going to talk about that whole retrograding games situation with WATA as it continues to just look more and more sketchy. You guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And a big shout out to everyone who has been subscribing and supporting the channel, as we have hit 600,000 subscribers, and I really appreciate that. We're going to start today with Gran Turismo 7. It's out the first week of March next year, and it looks like we have a look now at the 25th anniversary edition that you can pick up at launch. We can head over here to blog.playstation.com, where they show off the standard edition you can get. These called the launch edition, but it does come with some extra stuff, which includes a couple of cars like the Toyota Castrol Tom Supra and 100,000 in-game credit. Now, if we move up to the 25th anniversary edition, that being for the PS5 and the PS4, it will be available at retail or direct from PlayStation. It has a really nice looking steelbook case with a slipcover. I mean, that looks very sharp. And it also has several cars that will be included with this, as well as over 1 million in-game credits. The only thing with this is it's kind of a shame that they didn't have like a little model car or something that they can include with this and really go all out. But it is nice to have some sort of anniversary edition here to celebrate 25 years of Gran Turismo. Also, we did have reviews for Kena Bridge of Spirits go live yesterday, and of course, the game came out, and I had a chance to pick it up and play it some. But first, let's take a look at Metacritic here, currently sitting at an 84 with about 25 critic reviews. We can see the split being 24 positive and 1 mixed. In fact, there were different outlets that gave it like a perfect score. For example, DualShockers giving it 100, and then on the other end of the spectrum, we like Push Square with a 70, and I think we also like PC Gamer and Polygon giving it slightly less than that. But after spending roughly 5 hours with Kena so far, which apparently is like half of the game according to what people online are saying who have already played through it, it's not necessarily a long game, but again, I've said this before, I don't feel like every game has to be 40 or 50 hours long to feel like it was worth it. And looking at what I'm getting out of Kena Bridge of Spirits now, it is very enjoyable. I like the art style. I think it's very striking, the visuals overall and the style that they're going with. And I think the only issue I'm really having is the platforming. It feels a little heavy, specifically when you're jumping around with that double jump. In the combat, the way that they have it mapped out with the block being the same, that you kind of push out like the senses that you have, I find myself dodging more than using that just because it shares that same button, and then going between like R1 and R2 to swing around. It just takes some getting used to when it comes to the combat, but the exploration is fun, the world is interesting, and I like the idea of adding in mechanics from games like Pikmin, for example. So I'm going to continue playing it. It sounds like I'm already halfway through it, like I said, so I should have it wrapped up in time for the podcast this weekend. Oh, and I do like to keep you guys updated on any potential sales coming up for the Switch or PlayStation or any of that, especially if it's one for Nintendo's first-party games, because you don't see that very often. Well, it does appear that we will have a big sale going live later on this week, and we can see over at Nintendo Life where they have this nice chart showing off all the different percentages for discounts. This is apparently Nintendo's blockbuster sale, and it's gonna have hundreds of Switch games right now for Europe, but as we've seen before, generally that means it's also gonna go live in other regions. This starting in actually a few days, September 23rd, right at midnight, essentially. And we can see we have Super Mario Odyssey, 33% off, Link's Awakening, 33% off, Splatoon 2, the same deal there, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and they have some other pretty big discounts on games like Lego DC Supervillains at 75% off, Ni no Kuni will be 80% off, and apparently the list continues to go on. These are just some of the early highlights that Nintendo Life was able to show off here, so keep an eye out for the announcement announcement of this sale, as it does appear that it's going to have some pretty good discounts on Nintendo's first-party titles. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this anticipated announcement now from Nintendo and why everyone figures it's happening either today or tomorrow. We can see Rusty over here on Twitter saying, short-term confidentiality of Nintendo's HAC 043 FCC filing now ending September 24th, 2021. It was previously set for March 2022. But we looked at that and we said, okay, so by the end of this fiscal year, they're going to have this thing announced. Well, now it looks like by Friday, they will have this thing announced. And remember, this is the filing that we had looked at where it was just like a square, which was obviously a placeholder. And the idea was, okay, they want to show that there's going to be a label here, seemingly on the back of it, and then also on the top. Now we know by Friday, these documents from FCC are just going to be made public. And look, the FCC doesn't really care. Like, okay, wow, people now know that there may be an announcement or a direct. We're just trying to get the filing and paperwork pushed through and done. On Nintendo's side, though, it seems like they're gearing up to make this announcement ahead of that date. They kind of have to, or we're all just going to be sitting around looking at potentially a Nintendo 64 controller for some reason on the FCC's website that we don't actually have confirmation from Nintendo for. And looking at the timeline here, if it's going to be a Nintendo Direct that's traditionally done in September, you figure they'd want to give 24 hours notice, so it'll probably be this morning that they make that announcement, unless this Direct is maybe something a bit different. Maybe it's a mini. I mean, maybe it's not a full-blown Direct, it's something a bit smaller, and they just shadow drop it. That's very possible. Or maybe what we're seeing here with this accessory, this controller, what if it's another Ring Fit Adventure kind of thing where it's sort of just off on its own and they just drop a trailer and they're like, here's this new thing we've been working on. It's going to be coming out towards the end of this year or into next year. And that's what this is all geared around, not necessarily something for Nintendo Switch Online. The reason we believe it's for Nintendo Switch Online, and most likely either a Nintendo 64 controller or maybe some weird-looking Game Boy contraption to go along with the whole Game Boy release for Nintendo Switch Online, as is rumored, is because it kind of lines up with the Super Nintendo controller that was released for Nintendo Switch Online. So basically, keep your eyes out for some sort of announcement, I guess, on Nintendo's Twitter account for either a large Direct or maybe just letting us know outright what this is in a new trailer. Next up, let's talk about an issue with the PlayStation 4 that we actually explored here on the channel, where if the battery inside the PS4 dies and the system is unable to connect to the PlayStation servers, kind of resync everything, it won't play any of your physical PlayStation 4 games. We actually tried it out here and found that to be the case. Now, online, this whole situation, this issue's been dubbed CBOMB, and it appears that Sony must have been listening because they actually fixed it. We can see this over on Twitter from Destruction Games saying, so it looks like the 9.0 PS4 firmware update fixed the CBOMB issue. Tested it on my PS4 with a dead battery, and games are no longer crashing on startup, and I can even earn trophies, although the trophy earn dates will be blank. And that makes sense because for the trophies, they look to sync up with the PlayStation servers for all of that information. So maybe they went ahead and changed some things around, so it kind of bypasses that. Now, I was going to do some testing with this myself, but it does appear that MVG beat me to it, as he says, yep, confirmed Sony fixed the PS4 CBOMB issue with firmware 9.0, tested with a few games, and it's all clear. It looks like he will have a video coming soon, so make sure you keep an eye on MVG's channel for that. So this is obviously good for game preservation going forward, because the idea that you wouldn't be able to play your physical games in the future on a PlayStation 4 system if, say, I don't know, 30 years from now, there's just no way to connect to PlayStation server. I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen 30, even 40 years from now with Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo, any of these companies. Things do move quickly in the tech space. But one thing we do know is that if this was not resolved from Sony with the PS4, you wouldn't be able to play your physical games on that PlayStation system if there were no PlayStation servers to call to, and those batteries inside would be long dead 30, 40 years from now. So it is good to see that they were able to resolve this. I don't know if, I guess they just heard everyone online. I mean, the video that I did blow up to over 500,000 views, so I feel like it was just a collective effort from everyone who was looking at this and saying, well, that's not good. I mean, remember, Sony spent a lot of time early on in the generation as they just pounded Microsoft into submission over the Xbox One DRM. And the whole time they kind of had their own DRM sort of on the PlayStation 4. Now, whether it was that was accidental or who knows, it's good to see that they have fixed this. So if anything, make sure you go ahead and get your PS4 out of the closet if you put it away because you got a PS5 and get it updated to 9.0 because being able to fix this whole CBOMB issue may not be a big deal to you now, but who knows, 20, 30 years from now, it might be. Next up, let's talk about another retro game that was graded by Wata that went for way too much money. I mean, it's to the point now where even Yuji Naka is asking, all right, what's going on here with this whole thing? Because a sealed copy of Sonic sold for over $400,000. And I have some questions about the rating of this game. Let's take a look over here. This at Nintendo Life, where they say a copy of the original Sonic the Hedgehog game for Sega Genesis has been sold for a record-breaking sale of $430,500. This isn't just a new record for the Sonic game either. It also makes it an all-time record sale for any Genesis title. Now, take a look here. This is Yuji Naka. He's kind of quote tweeting this, looking and saying, what is this? It's Sonic, graded at 9.4, supposedly sealed. And then he goes on to say, is it a scam? That's a scam, right? I wondered if it was time for Sonic to reach a high. I mean, you have Yuji Naka looking at this sale, confused. Look at the box, by the way. It's graded at 9.4. In my mind, that's like mint pristine, right? That is a very high grade for a copy of a game. It's sealed, except not quite. I mean, look at the bottom. We have to zoom in for some of these images here. This, again, posted by Golden Auctions, where they did the whole auction process and everything here. It's torn on the bottom, the plastic is, and then at the top, it appears to be peeling away, as in it's not completely sealed mint. I wouldn't say it's a 9.4 at all. I've seen ones that are rated at like a 7.5 or an 8 in better condition than this. And after Carl's video around the whole thing with Wata and Heritage Auction, how it appeared that they were trying to pump up the overall retro market, I mean, you're gonna question that. It does not look legit at all, any of this, especially when it's so obvious looking right at it. Everyone said, wait a minute, that like the seal is torn on the front and then even at the top. How is that a 9.4? Unless, yeah, even the grades are being pumped up like just artificially so that the prices will then go up. I mean, there's still a lot of questions around that Mario 64 at 1.5 million. I have a lot of questions around this one because Genesis games, sure, it's sealed, I get that, but like Genesis games in general boxed are worth less because the boxes are hard plastic and they don't degrade or break down like we see the cardboard boxes for Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 games. It's just way easier to keep Genesis games intact. And when I had like retro stores that we were running, the Genesis section would always have box copies of Genesis games, and the Super Nintendo section never did. So to me, this whole thing just continues to look more and more sketchy, and yeah, as people are saying, more and more like a scam overall, way to artificially attempt to pump up the price of retro games and the entire retro market, continue to raise the floor price around several games that probably should not get that kind of a price in the open market. And it makes me wonder if now people are looking at their Sonic the Hedgehog cartridges that are boxed in all this, and again, the hard plastic shell, and say, wow, this thing has to be worth at least a couple $1,000s. That one sold for over $400,000. And they're making it, they're not even trying to hide this, it feels like. Just, I mean, it's right there. So let me know what you guys think about this whole thing with Sonic the Hedgehog, the seal being all torn up, being rated at a 9.4 and selling apparently at auction for over $400,000. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the UK sales charts and how a big PlayStation 5 restock completely affected the top 10. We can see this over from gamesindustry.biz. Starting at the top, number 1 was indeed Deathloop, sold very well in its opening debut there. Then we have Spider-Man Miles Morales jumping up from the number 13 spot up to 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe up to 3. We had Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. This one is interesting because it actually re-entered the charts. It fell out of the top 40. Back here with a 630% increase week over week to get to number 4. And a lot of that has to do with a restock of PlayStation 5 systems and the fact that it's only on the PS5. It almost appears that I guess Sony timed it along with Deathloop, and that makes sense. You have that big release that's only on the PlayStation 5 when it comes to consoles, and you get some systems out there alongside of it. Then we have Minecraft on the Switch, Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, once again, jumping from 19 up to 6, Animal Crossing New Horizons at 7, WarioWare Get It Together at 8, F1 2021, and then NBA 2K22 rounding out the top 10. Now, it does also appear that the Switch, as it did get a price cut in the UK, did also have some of their sales spike a bit, but a lot of this comes down to the PS5, which has been scarce and hard to find, just coming back in stock and pulling all of the game sales up with it. So I do expect this to happen quite frequently as we see PS5s get back in stock in places like the UK, even in Japan and the US, MPD, as PS5s continue to kind of flow in, especially into retail stores, you will see these games spike massively when it comes to sales overall. It's a very dominating week here for the PlayStation, specifically PlayStation 5 in the UK. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a little poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, which system would you rather have added to Nintendo Switch Online? And the Nintendo 64 took this one handily at 71% over the Game Boy and Game Boy Color at 29%. This was a question we brought up on the Spawncast this past weekend, so I figured I would try to fit it in here at some point with one of these polls, and I did see some of you say, hey, if the Game Boy Advance was in there next to the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, I probably would have chosen that over the Nintendo 64. I think Nintendo knows that. That's one of the reasons why I believe the Game Boy Advance is going to be part of the premium tier for Nintendo Switch Online. I believe the Nintendo 64 will also be part of that. I don't know if they'll both be announced at the same time. I kind of think Nintendo will add 64 and then later on add Game Boy Advance to that premium tier. And who knows, maybe someday we'll get to a point where GameCube will be added to another premium tier. I do believe that's the strategy Nintendo will go with, but hey, I guess we'll find out here pretty soon as we look towards the reveal of this accessory that we kind of think is some sort of controller or accessory to play into the Nintendo Switch Online service with these retro titles. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Breon saying, is it really a trading card game if you can't trade the cards? Technically, it's not. I mean, the whole thing around the branding is these are physical trading cards that you buy in booster packs, right, or deck builds or whatever. And then you can trade the physical cards around, and just that branding plays in to this online game that they have. But considering they're removing the trading aspect more or less to play into the gacha mechanics that we see all over the place with mobile phones, for example, those kind of games, I guess it's just Pokemon card game now, I guess. And really the reason they're doing that, as some people seem confused, is because it plays into the gacha mechanic. They want you to keep pulling for a specific card you want rather than just trade away one of the several multiple cards that you get that you don't want. That's how these gacha games make money, is to bar you from any way of getting these cards other than either paying money for them or grinding like tons and tons of hours just to get enough to pull for one pack. So it's a strange thing to consider. Yes, technically it's not a trading card game any longer. It's just a card game, but they still have several details to really unveil and tell us about here as we go along with this new Pokemon trading card game online. And ladies and gentlemen, that's good to hear for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's this mysterious controller from Nintendo in this FCC filing. Get your best guesses, I guess, down below, as it appears that the announcement is imminent for it. Also, what about that CBOMB issue for the PlayStation 4 now being resolved by Sony? And this whole situation around these sealed games that are being graded by WATA, selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction, it's looking sketchier and sketchier to me, but let me know how it looks to you. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.